Recently, I've had the chance to go and take photographs in a few different cities. I'll be totally honest with you, city photography is very fast becoming one of my favorite genres of photography. There's a lot to love about it. I approach it slightly differently now to the way I used to approach it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you can maximize, even if it's a short trip to a city and you want to come away with some lovely photos. Let's get into it. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. Now, like I said in the intro, I've been photographing various different cities over the course of this year. And certainly in the summer, I've been having a lot of fun going and taking photos in the city. And there's actually a few different reasons for why I really like that so much. One is that even in bright midday sun, there's always stuff to photograph, and actually it can make for an interesting type of photo, right? You get a lot of high contrast, and that doesn't necessarily matter so much in the city. There's also so many different ways to photograph a city, so many different things you can come away with, and that's what we're going to focus on in this video. Because in the past, the way I used to approach a city photography shoot was that I would focus mainly on, I guess you'd call them the sights, right? The big kind of things that you need to come away with a photograph of, which is important, I think. If you go to London, you're probably going to want to photograph something like St. Paul's Cathedral, Big Ben, something like that, right? It makes sense that you want to get that shot, maybe the Shard. If you go to Rome, you probably want to go and photograph something like the Colosseum or the Vatican or something like that. It's important, and that is good to come away with a photograph like that. But for me, at least now, this is actually not, I don't think, the most important thing when it comes to photographing a city. There are things that I think I would rather come away with. And the best way I can describe that is trying to photograph the actual vibe, the feeling of a city. That includes lots and lots of different things, but really getting down on the street level and capturing photos that really tell the more intimate story, I think, of the city. That could be including people in the shot, right? That can be getting down to street level and shooting slightly upward. That can be taking photos of what kind of on paper are fairly ordinary streets. They can be a great way to really capture that feeling of walking around the city. I think it gives you much more of a flavor of the city, right? A shot of the Colosseum in Rome, lovely, right? That's great. Love the Colosseum, beautiful, what a beautiful place. But this is actually one of my favorite photos from my time in Rome, because this is me in a tuk-tuk getting driven around, and I'm just snapping a photo of the street. All felt a little bit chaotic, and that was the feeling of that moment, kind of moving around through all the people, all that kind of stuff. And the photo in the tuk-tuk really captures that moment and that kind of experience. Similarly, in Valencia, yes, I absolutely took some photos of some nice things, some nice buildings, absolutely the architecture. We'll get onto that in a little bit. But some of these photos, this one with two people walking just along a street, one of my favorite ones I came away with, and actually something like this, where I'm capturing the people in the square, right? It's busy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of vibrance. That captures the feeling of being there and the kind of life of the city more, I think, than just a shot of a beautiful building. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't focus on those sites, and absolutely the architecture as well. I'm a big fan of looking up when you're in a city, right? There's loads of stuff to look up at, whether that be interesting buildings, interesting windows, light. There's loads of stuff to capture if you just raise your eyes up a little bit, all over the place. It doesn't have to be something spectacular. It could be something as simple as a skylight, which is just bringing light in a really interesting way. That goes for architecture as well. You don't only have to photograph the most kind of iconic buildings. Sometimes just capturing, again, the flavor of the architecture of where you are goes a long way to getting some really nice photos. And some of my favorite photos from somewhere like Prague or, again, Valencia are some of these photos where it's just windows on a wall and it's just a flavor of how the buildings are there, just how it all kind of looks, how it all pieces together. It gives you a much more kind of real feel of the city. Something else which I think can be really important with this is to vary the times of day that you go out shooting, right? So sunrise, sunset are always going to give you some really beautiful looks to things, but actually the nighttime can be really interesting because cities light up in different ways. You can capture all kinds of different things and a very different feel to things when it's night versus day. But if it's the summer, I think it's worth heading out in the middle of the day and getting that high sun in the sky, lots of contrast, people out and about, it's hot, it's warm, there's loads of life everywhere, things are happening. I think that can actually do a lot for your photography. That's one of the things I love most about city photography, is that there is always something to photograph no matter the time of day. You can always get a sense of, again, I keep saying it, but the feeling of the city, the life of the city at different times. And I've already mentioned it, but capturing people is just such an important part of that, right? The city is one thing, but the city is somewhat meaningless without the people in the scene. Now, I used to try and go out of my way to take photos of the streets when they're empty, right? Or get the buildings when there's no one around. Actually, now I much prefer leaning into having people in the frame, people there who are giving a sense of scale, but also a sense of that kind of wonder of the life and the vibrance and the full kind of heart of the city. Now that can be done with a nice wide angle shot where you've got lots of people in the frame, or you can zoom in and actually get maybe a specific subject, someone doing something interesting, a little bit of street photography kind of stuff, because that's really going to tell a story of the city, right? Focusing in these small moments in the middle of all the chaos, that can be really quite a big part of really coming away with a full sense of what the city is. So absolutely making sure to get those sights in. Yeah, you want to come away with a shot of some of the iconic parts that you're there to photograph, right? Makes sense. You probably want to get those in the bag. You absolutely want to vary those times. You want to get some interesting sunset shots, but middle of the day shots, maybe in the night shots, all kinds of stuff like that. Capturing the people and the vibrance and the life of the city. And really, the biggest tip for me and the thing that has changed the most for me is that the most important thing is capturing the feeling, the vibe of the city that I'm at, right? What is it like there? That's what I want the photos to really convey, because I'm less interested, I think, now in those iconic structures being my favorite shot. I want to come away with photos that really bring me back to that place. And that's photos like the tuk-tuk shot, right? Or people in the square kind of moving around, enjoying themselves. Or this person waiting with an umbrella in the rain. Those are the shots that really pull me back to that place, to that time, and the feeling of being in that city. Lastly, in terms of kit, it's absolutely tempting to have a nice wide angle lens. If you can have a wide angle zoom, maybe even better. But if you can have two lenses, something like a 16-35 is always going to work really well, I think, for a city. You're going to be able to get some nice wide shots. But a 24-70, if we're talking full frame, that's going to give you so much versatility in the way you can shoot. I personally like to keep it, if I can, on one lens, one camera, and then I can be nimble, I can be versatile, I can move around. And a 24-70 on a nice full frame camera is always going to be my preference when it comes to photographing a city. I just think it gives me the most versatility for getting those wider shots of the streets, of the buildings, stuff like that, but then being able to punch in on a subject, whether it's street photography, whether it is on a piece of architecture, just cropping things out in camera like that, using the zoom. That's the way that I like to shoot. But if I'm bringing two lenses, I'll typically go for a 16-35 as well, just to give me that little bit of extra width. You could also go for a nice prime wide angle. I think that's going to work really well. But personally, I like the versatility. In a city where things are moving, it's all hustling and bustling, and it's all a bit chaotic sometimes. I like having the zoom so that I can keep it all one system and just be shooting, moving, shooting, moving. Now, is there anything you do that we haven't covered here at all when it comes to city photography? A lot of this was very philosophical, not so kit-based. But I just have changed the way I look at city photography and the way that I like to approach it now. It's such an interesting genre, and there's so much to explore with it. So I'd love to know if there's anything you do differently that we've not touched on here, or if there's a specific lens or anything that you specifically take with you when you go to do this. Let me know in the comments, because that's always super interesting. Otherwise, there's a full list of all the kit we use for these different photos, this video, all this stuff down in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all the time. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.